Hello, so back for another video looking into the Hobbit Overhill and Underhill from Fantasy Flight Games for the Lord of the Rings, the living card game. So I recently finished off the last of the quests from the first set, Dungeons Deep and Caverns Dim. And I want to talk about it because there's quite a few sort of fun, quirky additions to this that make it rather unique. And show off kind of like the inventiveness of the folks behind the LCG. The thing that I think is quite nice about this actually is that it does something sort of different with the way that you play out the quest. And it was always going to be hard to try and do this kind of thing, but I think they managed to achieve most of what they set out to do. So one of the cool things about this is obviously you set up the lake in the cavern and the staging area, and you also create the riddle area. And this then creates two different sort of zones that you go into. So on the one hand, you have the dwarves trying to take on the forces of the goblins down in Goblin Town, and they're trying to get to 14, but they can't continue beyond that until the riddles have been completed. And obviously you're going to get an additional encounter card per step, so it's pretty tough. This then plays alongside another quest, which is the Riddles in the Dark one. So this one, search the encounter deck for Golem and Bilbo's magic ring. Place Golem and Bilbo in the riddle area and attach the magic ring to Bilbo. Then shuffle the encounter deck. So this creates a separate area. Now this only needs 9 progress to complete, but you can't put progress on here through any means other than by adding, by solving riddles. So it's also completely immune because obviously these two are away doing their own bits and pieces. So this is then sat to the side like that almost, as you see there. And then that comes in later. So then we have Golem himself. So Golem, after the first player answers the rules and fails to find at least one match, Golem attacks Bilbo Baggins. Do not deal a shadow card, because that would be pretty nasty. But he's 2 attack, so he's going to do 1 wound to Bilbo each time he attacks him if you don't have any of the additions like Sting, for example. And obviously if you fail multiple times, he'll just do automatic damage to Bilbo. So he's going to be sitting to the side there with Bilbo Baggins. And then obviously Bilbo gets the magic ring. And this is where you get to spend his resources to draw additional cards and that kind of thing. And you can use the magic ring to add resources to his pool. But we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So the card that will find itself in the midst of things is the lake in the cavern. So it's literally just a bonus threat place that you can't get rid of to begin with, but it kind of sets the tone for a lot of things. And this is where the riddles come in, and they are all very different. So with the riddles, they usually have something like name a sphere, name a card type, or name a cost. And then you'll discard cards on the top of your deck, and if you match them, you'll place the progress tokens on here, as we said before. So if you get them right, so for example in this one, the first player names a sphere. In my case, I often named leadership. Shuffle the deck, discard the top card. For each of these cards that match, place 1 progress on stage 2. And obviously you can just do that the one time and just get the 1 progress, or you can use the additional riddle resources, sorry, the pipe resources from Bilbo in order to draw more of them and therefore add them onto the quest. Although obviously you want to try and keep that for some of the tougher ones. So you have and the nice thing about this is that in this one, you can decide whether or not you want to put the card into this quest or into the riddle quest. So you can just leave the dwarves to kind of like battle the way through if they want and take on all the goblins while Bilbo's answering all the riddles, which is cool and kind of themes things to what's going on beyond the bounds of the lake and the cavern and stuff. So there's a whole bunch of different ones in here. So for example, like you don't see the wargs very often in the beginning because they're obviously going to come up later, and their big thing is all about the riddles. So you want to try and keep them away from the dwarves to begin with. But then you've got some of these nasty treacheries, which I think are brutal if they come out at the wrong time. So this one is the first player must choose to answer the riddle on this card. If he finds at least one match, discard cards from the encounter deck until another card with a riddle is discarded, then answer that riddle again. And not only that, but you have to name a cost, shuffle the deck, and discard the top 2. So if you're not sure what the costs of the resources, the cards in your deck are by resources, then it can be pretty rough. You also have ones like this. So the first player must choose and answer the riddle on this card. This effect cannot be cancelled, unlike the other one. So the first player names a sphere and cost, shuffles his deck, then discards the top 2 cards. Oh, it is pretty nasty. And there is also a card in here that Golem can bring. So this is the one here. So the first player names a card type and then discards the top 3 cards of the encounter deck. For each of these cards that does not match the name, remove progress in stage 2. So, and this effect cannot be cancelled either. So this is pretty nasty, and you don't want to see this popping up when you're playing the game. So yeah, you'll mostly just play through that, as I say, taking on the different creatures and stuff and answering the riddles. Obviously, the dwarves are going to be fighting the goblins, as you would expect, as they're running away from the depths of Goblin Town. So you've got all these nasty goblins to deal with. Although if you've managed to put together a good deck to get through the last one, these should be pretty easy to take on. So then things get a little more hairy when we get to stage 3, which is over here, out of shot. So with stage 3, you reunite with the dwarves after solving all the riddles, and you manage to complete both of them. And then you just have to get to 16 progress on this quest. So the first player will then regain control of Bilbo Baggins to reveal an additional encounter card for the player and enter the staging area. Then Golem engages the first player, as you can imagine, and you get to fight him. All riddle effects are ignored. Treachery cards gain surge. So all the things that we previously had that were treacheries now don't just not do anything, they now surge so that they affect everything that's going on, so they're not useless. And this also means that you then cannot avoid the likes of the wargs, and the wargs do pretty much what every warg has ever done in any set for Lord of the Rings, and they do extra damage when dealt shadow cards, especially if this one's a riddle, and they are nasty. 3 threat, 3 attack, 2 defense, and 3 wounds. They are rough stuff, especially when you combine them with all of the other goblins. Now, don't do what I did when you get to this stage of the quest and keep revealing 2 encounter cards, because you only need 1. So yes, it's a very nasty quest to get through, but if you manage to get to the end of it, it is very, very good indeed. I will say that's one of the saving graces of this particular quest, was finding the treasures from the first one and being able to bring Sting into effect, because Sting is amazing and allows you to draw a card and do damage to an opponent before you hit them based on their threat. So for example, if you are going up against something like a warg or something, and then you draw a warg card, then you'll be able to do 3 damage to that warg and take it out with Sting. It is pretty cool. But yes, I thought this was a really fun quest. It was cool to try and do 2 things at the same time, and it didn't feel overwhelming. I think it was a really fun one to do solo, which you often don't necessarily get with all of these. Sometimes you think maybe 2 players would be better for approaching all of these quests. Each of you playing with a group of 3 heroes, obviously. But I thought this one worked quite nicely. And it was a good sort of like capstone to the end of the expansion. It was certainly a fun adventure. I'll say the first quest was ridiculously hard compared to the other 2. This one did take me 3 attempts to beat, mainly because the riddles kept killing Bilbo, which is obviously a fairly condition. Just kept screwing up my guesses with the riddles, which was unfortunate. But yes, less said about that, the better. I think as a set, it was fairly balanced. I would say that the first quest, as I was mentioning, was probably much harder than it needed to be. The second quest was fairly easy. It was a fun kind of like 2-parter, and I really liked the fact that it had the 2 encounter decks. And then this one, I think, was probably the best of the 3, mainly because it played out that kind of riddle game with Golem, and I thought that was exceptionally good fun. And it was also a nice little fight at the end as well. So a particularly good one for my leadership deck. which is Leadership and Will deck, which was all about kicking ass and taking names. So yes, a very cool quest to end things off. And it has put me in good spirits for the second Saga expansion from The Hobbit. I am really looking forward to picking up On The Doorstep and continuing my adventures with Thorin and company and seeing where things go. I'm very intrigued to see how they do things like the barrels out of bonds sequence, and also like dealing with Smaug. Smaug's going to be fascinating because obviously, again, it's a little bit kind of like a teasing moment between Bilbo and Smaug as they chat to each other. So I want to see how they play that out. Maybe it'll be something similar to what we got as part of the Riddles in this third quest. But yeah, a fun expansion, a good expansion. Obviously, again, something that was expanded upon and changed drastically and almost refined with the Lord of the Rings Saga expansions, which I would love to have another pop out at some point in the future. But yeah, also way harder if you haven't got a lot more cards. I obviously have just the core set and the Hobbit expansion, so that made things a lot tougher. But I would recommend it if you're interested in giving The Hobbit a go, or if you like the Hobbit period. I think it was still fun, probably fun to do with two people, I think, so you can get the kind of full Thorin's Company experience. But yeah, a neat one, and I will be back with more videos looking at a lot more from Lord of the Rings, the living card game, in the near future. Bye for now, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.